Chileans rejected the constitutional plebiscite on Sunday with more than 55% of the vote, thus maintaining the current constitution from the dictatorship of Augusto Pinochet. In Palestine, the Israeli occupation forces committed a new massacre in the Gaza Strip within the framework of the 73-day Zionist siege on Gaza. And Kenya and the European Union on Monday signed a long-negotiated trade agreement to boost bilateral trade as Brussels pursues stronger economic ties with Africa. Hello, welcome to From the South. My name is Belén de los Santos, and from the teleSUR studios in Havana, Cuba, we begin with the news. Chileans rejected the constitutional plebiscite on Sunday with more than 55% of the vote, a fact that maintains the current constitution from the dictatorship of Augusto Pinochet. According to data from the Electoral Service, with 99.78% of the tables counted, the against option accumulated 55.76% of the votes, while the in favor option had 44.24%. With this result, a second rejection of a constitutional reform proposal materializes after the plebiscite of 2022. The debate to modify the constitution began in 2019 after huge protests sparked a national referendum in which 4 out of 5 Chileans voted to scrap their constitution, a modified version of the 1980 text approved under the military dictatorship of General Augusto Pinochet. And the foreign minister of Venezuela, Iván Gil, on Monday, in his account on the social network X, denounced the interference and destabilization plans of the government of the United Kingdom over the territory of the Guayana Esequiba that seeks to disrupt the order of the region. Gil rejected the UK's position of intervening in the territorial controversy that Gil assures they themselves have generated. In his statement, he also reiterated that the government of Caracas will resolve this controversy directly between the parties and recalled that the only valid action of the United Kingdom will be the recognition of its responsibility before the international law and the obligations derived from the 1966 Geneva Agreement. On Monday, the UK Minister for the Americas, David Rutley, announced he will visit Guyana with a view of strengthening British support for the administration of Irfan Ali over the territorial dispute. And teleSUR grows and will soon expand its content to the Arab world. A framework collaboration agreement between the Green Zone Foundation of Qatar and the multi-platform teleSUR was signed on Sunday at the headquarters of the multinational in Havana, Cuba. The agreement was signed by the president of the Green Zone Foundation, Darwish Saleh Al-Shevani, and the president of teleSUR, Patricia Villegas. The first objective of the agreement is to translate teleSUR's content into Arabic and contribute to making Arabic culture and language better known in Latin America. Prior to the signing of the agreement, the president of the Arab organization toured the working areas of teleSUR's production center in Havana. Green Zone Foundation is a non-governmental cultural foundation created in May 2021 in Doha, Qatar, whose main objective is to create ties between nations through the dissemination of Qatar's culture, the exchange of artistic expressions, and the study of the Arabic language.
I come with the idea of promoting the Arabic language, and the Arabic language is part of the Spanish culture. We believe that language is the door to cultures and that we are going to take advantage of the fact that there are two cultures, the Arabic and the Latin. And we want to bring this culture and nations closer together. We attach great importance to human development of Latin America and the Arab world, and as I said, language is the best link for that.
We are a major producer of content in English, Spanish, and Portuguese, but we also need to make the transition to another part of the world. We have just signed an agreement that will allow us to start translating our content into Arabic. The idea is that we will go step by step, but then we will also grow in the production of content in that language and in the distribution of users in that language. So Today, a news item that appears on teleSUR that is relevant, that is important, will appear in the three languages that we speak in our region, English, Spanish, and Portuguese. And through this agreement, it will also be in Arabic. So it gives us a tremendous opportunity to grow and expand our message, and in this particular case, to the Arabic world, to tell them what is happening in Latin America and the Caribbean, that we are following the great emphasis in which teleSUR works and has its righteous capacity installed.
On Monday, the president of the multi-platform teleSUR rejected in her social network X the new threats of the Southern Command against the signal at the service of the Global South. In this regard, journalist Patricia Villegas denounced the statements made by the head of the U.S. Southern Command, Laura Richardson, regarding the journalistic work of teleSUR, which demonstrates the interference of the most powerful army in the world in regional sovereignty. In this sense, Villegas recalled that the U.S. official on two occasions in 2023 has attacked several alternative media outlets at a time when, coincidentally, there are reports of 90 journalists murdered by Israel during its brutal aggression against the Gaza Strip. Meanwhile, Villegas reiterated her commitment made 18 years ago to build the largest communication platform in Latin America and the Caribbean, and called on the people of the world to be vigilant in the face of this threat. In Argentina, storms affecting the province of Buenos Aires left at least 15 people dead. The authorities reported 2 new deaths. On the one hand, a woman in the town of Moreno who was crushed by a tree branch, and another person in Coronel Rosales who drowned after falling into a well full of water. The storm broke out on Saturday night and initially left 13 people dead, among them a minor, due to the collapse of part of a club in the city of Bahia Blanca. Roofs and billboards were also blown off. Trees and electricity poles fell, affecting the power supply and land communication routes. And in Australia, floods caused by the passage of Cyclone Jasper closed roads, airports, and left hundreds of people evacuated in the north of the country. The government of Australia ordered on Monday the deployment of up to 150 soldiers to support emergency services with evacuations in several localities that have been isolated in the extreme northeast as a result of the floods generated by the passage of Cyclone Jasper in the region. Through a message published on the social network X, the Australian Minister for Emergency Management informed that the emergency helicopters will be sent to evacuate the isolated residents. On the other hand, the police of the northeastern state of Queensland confirmed the rescue of more than 300 people, assuring that a similar catastrophe had not been seen in the region since 1977. And overseas visitors were at Cairns Air Resort, considered the gateway to Australia's Great Barrier Reef in far north tropical Queensland, comment on the weather event.
It's a little bit crazy, like we didn't expect something like this. I never see flooding like this before, and it's the first time, so it's a little bit impressive for me. And yeah, it's getting like real, more or less. So I'm in a hostel at the moment, so for now it's fine. We have a little bit of water inside, but like it's not too much, and the rooms are still dry, so it's fine for us. But yeah, we have to be careful at any time.
And let's take a short break, but remember you can join us on TikTok at teleSUR English, where you will find news in different formats, news updates, and more. Other stories coming up, stay with us. Welcome back. Local media in Palestine announced on Monday that the Israeli occupation forces committed a new massacre in the Gaza Strip within the framework of the 73-day Zionist attack on the region. In turn, health sources announced that more than 100 people were killed after massive overnight attacks in Jabalia in the north of Gaza. In this regard, the report added that hundreds of people remain trapped under the rubble and that some 20 have been hospitalized. At the same time, the Israeli occupation airplanes also launched violent attacks on different areas of the city of Khan Yunis, killing dozens of people. So far, more than 19,000 civilians, most of them children and women, have been killed in Gaza in the framework of the genocide perpetrated by Israel since October 7th. And in relation to the attacks in the Gaza Strip, the Israeli occupation army launched military incursions in several locations in the West Bank. The Palestinian Ministry of Health reported that 4 Palestinians were killed on Monday by Israeli soldiers in the Farah refugee camp south of the city of Tubas. The 4 young men killed, aged between 17 and 24 years old, were hit by Israeli projectiles in the head and chest. And on Monday in Palestine, Tarek al-Dagma, doctor at the Tahrir Maternity and Pediatric Unit, denounced the genocide faced by the medical staff and patients at health centers in Gaza. In this sense, he warned that the maternity and pediatric unit, if they cease to exist, they will operate and it will be a massacre for more than 20,000 patients.
It was a continuing horror scenario that is taking place in all hospitals. We were not expecting this is the last residue as a major hospital in the south. It's the last residue for patients. It's the last sanctuary for people as a shelter. I was just informed an hour earlier. The last doctor who is taking night shifts is telling us and informing us that he is unfortunately going to leave and take his family to save them. It's going to be really difficult for us to maintain medical stuff here and to maintain medical service as well. We try to be the last ones to leave, but we should look after our patients, especially ICU patients. We don't want to face the same scenario as at Shifa, Rantisi and the Nasser Hospital, where patients were left alone to die. To stop, this is the last major hospital in the south. If this hospital will go out of service, it will be massacre for all the patients, more than 20,000 patients.
And as the humanitarian crisis worsens in Gaza, trucks carrying aid passing through the border city of Rafah on Sunday were boarded and the aid thrown on the crowds on the street. People also chased the vehicles and boxes of aid fell from the trucks into the road. Gaza remained under a communication blackout for the 4th straight day, the longest of several outages over the course of the Zionist aggression. Aid groups say the blackout complicates rescue efforts after bombings and make it even more difficult to monitor the war's toll on civilians. Today, the Israeli regime has killed over 19,000 Palestinians in Gaza, most of them women and children. Over 3/4 of the territory's 2.3 million people have been displaced. In Egypt, a group of 4 European lawmakers called on Sunday for a ceasefire in Gaza, following their trip to the Rafah crossing to see how European aid is helping Palestinians. Lawmakers from France, Sweden, and Ireland, affiliated to the centrist parliamentary group Renew Europe, are among those participating in the call. Christopher Grudler, French lawmaker and head of the delegation, said progress is being made in the idea of a ceasefire in the Israel-Hamas war. While Abir al-Salani, a Swedish lawmaker, said a ceasefire is urgently needed to improve the humanitarian situation in Gaza. Al-Salani also called Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and his far-right government to stop the genocide in Gaza and on the United States to join European calls for a ceasefire.
We found out that no matter how much we are going to send, it doesn't matter because there is no ceasefire and there is no security. As long as there are bombs, Israeli bombs falling on the Palestinian people, the aid won't do its job. We might, give the food and they will be, for a while, full, but then they go out and they stay at home and they will be killed by the Israeli bombs.
And we have a second short break coming up. But before we invite you to join our WhatsApp community for our English-speaking audience, you can scan the QR code on screen to join directly and share the link to reach more people. Constant news coverage of Latin America and the Caribbean, as well as the rest of the world. Stay connected and informed with teleSUR. Final short break. Don't go away. Welcome back. Kenya and the European Union on Monday signed a long-negotiated trade agreement to increase the flow of goods between the two markets as Brussels pursues stronger economic ties with Africa. The Economic Partnership Agreement will give Kenya duty-free and quota-free access to the EU, its biggest export market, while European goods will receive progressive tariff reductions. The agreement is the first broad trade deal between the EU and an African nation since 2016 and follows a spreading spree by China on lavish infrastructure projects across the continent. EU chief Ursula von der Leyen said the partnership was a win-win situation on both sides and called on the other East African nations to join the pact, which came after years of negotiation. Both the Kenyan and the European parliaments must ratify the deal before it comes into force. The 27-nation bloc accounts for more than 20% of Kenya's overall exports, mainly agricultural products, including vegetables, fruits, and the country's famous tea and coffee.
Partnerships like ours are precious. And because they are so precious, in the times we live in, they need to be strengthened. And that's what we are doing here today, very concretely, with the signature of the EU-Kenya Economic Partnership Agreement.
In this context, the President of Kenya, William Ruto, expressed his country's willingness to commit to the agreement in order to strengthen cooperation with the European Union.
In the agreement, Kenya and the EU have committed to advance their mutual trade, investment, and economic cooperation objectives sustainably through the implementation of a strong joint environmental agenda. Through the agreement, therefore, Kenya has found a like-minded partner equally committed to the transition into a green economy and towards that end to pursue sustainable trade.
A powerful explosion and fire at Guinea's main fuel depot rocked the center of the capital, Conakry, on Monday, injuring dozens of people. Local authorities reportedly closed schools and urged workers to stay home as thick black clouds of smoke filled the sky and residents fled the area. The incident occurred at the state oil company's main depot in the Kaloum district near the port. The government, for its part, reported that the gas stations would also remain closed and that an investigation would be launched in the coming hours to determine the cause and those responsible. For their part, they assured that additional resources had been set to contain the fire and minimize its consequences, and instructed that the population in the immediate area should move away from the site, not only for their safety, but also to allow emergency teams to work safely. And in Serbia, the coalition of the ruling Serbian Progressive Party of President Aleksandar Vučić won parliamentary elections on Sunday. According to the country's electoral commission, officialism won with 49.84% of the vote after checking 50.41% of the ballot. In second place was the main rival, the opposition Serbia Against Violence, with 20.14% of the votes. President Vučić's party would get 128 of the 250 seats in parliament, giving it an absolute majority. On the same day, Serbia held provincial and local elections in the autonomous region of Vojvodina in the north of the country, as well as in 65 cities and municipalities, including the capital, Belgrade.
We promised the people that Serbia would be a different country, that they would not be able to recognize it in 3 years. We'll still have a lot to do, very important things, and to get so many votes, to get the second best result in history after 11 years in power, I must say that I am absolutely happy.
And Russian President Vladimir Putin on Monday presented documents to Russia's Central Electoral Commission, taking another step to formally register his candidacy for the 2024 presidential election. Supporters of Putin on Saturday nominated him to run in the 2024 presidential election as an independent candidate. The nomination by a group of at least 500 supporters under Russian election law is mandatory for those running not in a party ticket. The group that nominated Putin included top officials from the ruling United Russia Party. After Putin submits documents on the group's meeting, he is allowed to start collecting signatures of support. To be registered for the election, independent candidates need to gather at least 300,000 signatures from 40 regions or more. Earlier this month, lawmakers in Russia set the country's 2024 presidential elections for March 17th. Under constitutional law, Putin is eligible to seek 2 more 6-year terms after his current term expires next year, potentially allowing him to remain in power until 2036. In the 25th Harbin Ice and Snow World officially opened to the public at 11 a.m. on Monday in northeast China, Heilongjiang province. The Harbin Ice and Snow World is one of the world's leading theme parks featuring large-scale ice and snow sculptures. Harbin is the host city of the 2025 Asian Winter Games. This year's Ice and Snow World combines winter sports with the regional culture and ice and snow culture of Heilongjiang to create an ice wonderland for tourists from all over the world. Covering an area of 810,000 square meters, the park features over 2,000 ice and snow sculptures, marking the largest scale in its history. This year's Ice and Snow World provides a more diversified experience to visitors where they can appreciate the finely designed ice and snow sculptures and enjoy ice and snow entertainment activities. The Harbin Ice and Snow World came into Beijing in 1999 with various activities held in the park every winter for several months. Ice and snow events have become a driving force for tourism in Harbin. And like this, we have come to the end of this news brief. But before saying goodbye, we want to thank our Caribbean audience, especially the audience of Trinidad and Tobago. We are pleased to share our newscast and contribute to provide an alternative news source of the latest world events. You can find these and many other stories at our website at telesurenglish.net. And also join us on social media, Facebook, X, Instagram, Telegram, and TikTok.